Well, welcome back to our series Eliminate, the third part now. So far we've talked about our need to eliminate sin, we've talked about our need to eliminate distractions, and tonight we're going to talk about our need to eliminate hurry. Now, this is one I have to admit that I've been both excited about, but also nervous about. Because this is one that was literally a life-changing topic or idea to me. And I don't say that about very many things. Not very many things are actually life-changing, but this one was. And so obviously it was something that I thought was good, something I thought was beneficial, and you, of course, want to share that with others. But I am a 36-year-old pastor, husband, father, and I'm processing through this idea of the need to eliminate hurry. But I have to admit, when I was a college student, a high school student, a junior high student, I didn't really think about it that much. So I thought, well, is this really going to be applicable? Is it really going to be helpful? But the way I thought about it more and more was that I saw some things I needed to change. I saw some mistakes I was making and kind of was getting rerouted around those things. And so I thought, well, you know what? Maybe if we talk about this right now, at the stage of life that you're at, maybe, just maybe, you can avoid some of those same mistakes that I made. Maybe you can get these things figured out before I did. You never know. So let's talk about it a little bit. Okay, there's a story about 3 fish. Now, let me preface this by saying, I know fish don't talk, but these 3 fish do. So there was one older fish and 2 younger fish. The 2 younger fish are swimming by. The older fish is watching him, and he yells out, "Hey, boys, how's the water today?" And one of the 2 younger fish look at the older fish and says, "What's water?" See, the point with that is that fish are immersed in water. It's all they know. So you have to ask them what it is. They don't even know because it's just the water that they're swimming in. It's the thing they live in. And for the purpose of tonight, think of hurry that way. Hurry is the water that we are all swimming in. Hurry is the water that we are all constantly surrounded in, to the point where we don't even realize it. If someone says, why are you in such a hurry? We'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm not in a hurry. This is just how life is. But try to think for a moment that maybe this thing that we're surrounded by, maybe it hasn't always been that way. I've talked quite a bit about how life has sped up. And again, I know there's these thoughts of the phones we have and computers and technology and Netflix and all these different things that we have now. But we have to keep in mind, all previous generations until recently did not have those things constantly around them. So life did go without those things. Now that they're here, it has caused things to speed up, even for myself. I remember when email was really becoming a thing. So if you ever saw the old movie You've Got Mail, that was a big deal. Hey, you've got email. This is amazing. Now it's how many junk mail do you get a day? A lot. But there was this time when it was kind of starting to be a new thing. And I had a friend that lived up in Washington, and we would correspond back and forth through writing letters. And it would take probably 2 or 3 days to get up there. My friend would get the letter, have to read it, have to take the time to write back, go and post it, and then it would come to me. So, this is several weeks back and forth. And finally, when I got an email address, I asked my friend, I said, hey, do you have an email? Because just imagine, instead of taking 3 days for a letter to get to you, it could take 3 seconds. And at the time, I didn't really understand that it actually doesn't take that long for something to travel. I was picturing it bouncing off of space, satellites going around the world. I didn't know that it just instantly got there. The point was, it would be much faster. So things sped up, even just in my own lifetime. Way back in the 1930s, there was an economist who predicted that by today's time, we would be working about 15 hours a week because of the way that things would advance. It says, there's just not going to be stuff to do. And a big concern, even in the preceding following decades after that, was the worry of too much leisure time. What are we going to do with all this extra time? And it actually seemed for a while that the trend was going to happen. By the 1970s, the average work week had decreased from 47 hours on average to 39 hours on average. So there was a downward trend. That's a considerable amount of time. But then it flipped around. It shifted, and now today, on average, people work 4 weeks more than they worked in 1979. So things kind of went the other way. What happened is we built this system that values speed, hurry, going. There's lots of studies that look at why this happened. I think part of it is what we value, what we prioritize. So looking at hurry, I think that hurry creates a false sense of identity. And what I mean by that is we can place our identity, who we are, our own value, in how busy we are, how hurried we are. What do we usually do? We'll ask someone, hey, how are you? The answer usually, and you're probably guilty of this too because I know I am, usually the answer is, oh, it's really busy. It's almost like we have to say that, because if we're not, then it's well, what am I doing with my life, right? If I say, I don't know, I'm just kind of bored. It's been really relaxed lately, just haven't had much to do. People look at me like, what is wrong with you? Like, come on, you're an adult. Time to get going. We feel like we almost have to say that we're busy, that we're in a hurry, because we've built a value system based off of how much you're getting done. But here's the thing. The gospel is not that way. Remember, Ephesians 2:8-9, the second part of that, Ephesians 2:9 says that our grace that we have is not by works, not by the things we do, so that no one may boast. So what we've done today is we've tied our value into our works. Look at how much I'm doing. Look at how busy I am. Basically what we've said is, if I'm busy, I'm valuable. That's where we've gotten to. When I played basketball growing up, I think one of my favorite compliments that my coach would ever give was if he said, "Hey, Michael, good hustle." Because, I'm not going to make every basket. I'm not going to make every pass. I'm not going to get every block. But no matter what, even if I'm not getting those things, I can still hustle. I can still give 110%, as we say, even though that's not really possible. But I can still be giving it all out there. A coach is never going to be like, "Hey, you know what? When the ball went down the court, you were so leisurely and calmly walking after it. I'm really proud of you." So hustle, hurry, it's good in some areas, right? But not in all areas. Like, think about if you had a friend over and you're talking with your friend. Would you want that to have good hustle to it? And you're like, I went over to my friend's house, and man, for dinner, such a good hustle. They brought the food out so fast. We ate so fast. I left. I was out of there. Whole time, 15 minutes. It was good. Good time. We had a good time together. That's not a good place for hustle. Or what about like with our walk with Jesus? It's like, my devotional time, I really hustled through it. Or like I was spending some time alone, just, me and the Lord praying. I hustled through that prayer so good. No, there's some times where it's actually the opposite of what we want. It's actually antithetical to what we're actually trying to accomplish. Megan and I, we try to motivate our kids by getting them to do, chores and stuff, by kind of getting them to hustle. And basically, our kids aren't always doing exactly what we want, so we try to get them to do things by, one of the ways is timing them. So we'll say, hey, you know what, last time you cleaned your room in 5 minutes. I'm going to time you. Can you do faster? Or, okay, clear the table, guys. Can you do it in 30 seconds? Or, okay, go get your jammies on. Who can do it? Okay, I'm going to start a timer, see how fast you can go. So we time them, and it actually sometimes works, makes them go pretty fast. One time, though, one of our kids was like, okay, I'm going to go brush my teeth. Time me to see how fast I can go. I was like, okay, wait a second. Actually, that is not one of the things we want to hurry through. You want to take your time. You want to get all the teeth. You want to be like, done, quickly. No, so that's actually not what we're trying to go. And that's how hurry can be. There's some times where we can make hurry such a part of our lives that we're hurrying through things that we shouldn't be hurrying through. We're speeding through things that we don't actually want to speed through. And I think what hurry does, I think it comes from false priorities. I think it comes from a place that really we're wrongly valuing what hurry can accomplish. And again, sometimes it can accomplish things. Let's be honest. Speed, hustle, hurry, it can get results. But we can sometimes value what it gets us in a negative way too. I think what happened in the 1970s and in the decades after that is there was kind of a shift. Part of the reason is this shift in advertising that went from giving you information to giving you emotion. So what they would start, they used to say like, oh, this car has an engine. It's like, oh, okay, good. And then they shifted and started saying, this car will make you feel free. Oh, well, in my garage, I have a car with an engine, so that information isn't really doing much. But the car in my garage, it doesn't make me feel free. I need this new one. And so suddenly there became all these reasons to get things that we didn't really necessarily need, but we started valuing. We value things. We value experiences. The more experiences, the more busy I am, the better life is. So what I think early researchers didn't see coming is that we would value stuff over time. We have only a finite amount of time, but there's only a finite amount of stuff we can get. So let's maximize our time to get more stuff. And this is just the way the world is, right? True, but what does it say in Romans 12:2? Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. Don't be conformed to this world. The system of the world, the water that we're all swimming in, it might be hurry, but we are not meant to be conformed. We are supposed to stand apart. And I think too much, if we kind of get into this stream of hurry, what it can do, it can lead to a false direction. So we'll be going somewhere fast, but where are we going? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. Might be moving quickly, but where are we heading? Who are we becoming? Are we on a path to become someone that we want to become? Remember, you will never get to the right place on the wrong path. So it's not just how fast we're going, but we have to look and say, well, what road am I on? And we can say, well, that's just the way the world is, right? But that's not how we should be. Jesus said in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He's the way. So we should be following his way because it's the way. Now, obviously, there's a problem because there is a constant pressure on all of you to do more. There will always be people asking for more, wanting more. There will always be more options than you literally have time to do. And so our only response is like, well, just fill it up. Just be as busy as we can be. We feel that burden, that weight, that pressure of hurry and busy. So what do we do? Well, let's look at Jesus' words again. Matthew 11:28-30. He says, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. There's so much good stuff in there, and we can't look at it all right now. What I want to just focus on is the part there that he says, learn from me. See, we know Jesus is our Savior. We know he's the Son of God. And we look at him as having some good ideas. But I think sometimes what we don't do is look at him for actually how to live our lives, to actually learn from how he lived and then follow how he lived. Lifestyle matters. The way you live your life matters. So following Jesus isn't just some ideas. It's actually a different way of living, a different way of life. There's a book written several years ago by a pastor named Kyle Idleman. It's called Not a Fan. And in this book, he talks about the difference between being a fan of Jesus or an actual follower of Jesus. He says, fans have a tendency to confuse their knowledge for intimacy. They don't recognize the difference between knowing about Jesus and truly knowing Jesus. I'll give you an example again, just in the earthly sense, my wife, Megan. I'm a fan of her, but I also have a relationship with her. I actually know her. And think about it this way. So all the things I know about her as a husband, because I have a relationship with her, if I didn't have the relationship, it'd be just weird, right? Like knowing her birthday and like her height and like her favorite color and the food she likes and like her hair. I mean, all these things, if I didn't have the relationship, that's called stalking. But, since we're married, it's okay. And then you're allowed to do it. But I mean, all that knowledge, all that information, it wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't apply if I didn't have an actual relationship with her. And in the same way, if we just have information about Jesus, knowledge about Jesus, but don't actually know him, actually have a relationship with him, we're doing it wrong. Jesus said in Matthew 15:8, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. You can say the right things, you can go through the right motions, but you actually know him, not just about him. Is there a relationship there? Jesus truly offers a different way of living, not just ideas that are good or interesting or intellectual, but a way to live your life differently. That's what he does. John Mark Comer says, if results you're getting are lousy, anxiety at a simmer, mild depression, high levels of stress, chronic emotional burnout, little to no sense of the presence of God, an inability to focus your mind on things that make for life, etc., then the odds are very good that something about the system of your life is off kilter. The way you've organized your morning or evening routine, your schedule, your budget, your relationship to your phone, how you manage your resources of time, money, and attention, something's out of whack. He's saying if you have this kind of constant sense of just feeling unsettled, of something being wrong, then maybe something's wrong. Because that's not the kind of life that Jesus offers. So what we have to ask is our lifestyle being more influenced off of Jesus or off of the world? What's the water that we're swimming in? Now, make no mistake, I think Jesus had a very full schedule. I really do. But I don't get the sense, reading the Gospels, reading about Jesus, I don't get the sense that he was in a hurry to do those things. Think about this. Jesus waited till he was in his 30s to start his ministry. Going back to the first century, the lifespan of a male at that time, it's probably like Jesus would have been, say, like in his 50s or 60s in today's time. I mean, 30 was not young then, it's not young now, but I mean, it was actually a little bit older considering the lifespan of a man. So it doesn't seem like he was in a hurry to get things started. And even in his ministry, the 3 years that he had, we see him go to a friend's house and have a meal. We see him sit at a well and talk to a woman, have a conversation, be present in that moment. He didn't have a phone to pull out. No, he talked. He engaged. We see that when his friend Lazarus died, he waited 2 days before going to visit. He wasn't in a hurry. Jesus knew what he was doing. Now, does that mean, just drop everything in our life, just be lazy and be like, I'm just being really Christ-like today. I'm doing nothing. No, he did lots of things. Ephesians 5, 15 and 16 says, look carefully then how you walk. Not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. The best use of the time. Don't be lazy and do nothing, but also don't just pile more and more stuff on. Be intentional. Be intentional about the things that you add. Be intentional about the things you need to subtract in your life. It comes down, I think, to really the question of, do we trust that God's way is actually best? If Jesus actually said, follow me, my way is the best, do we actually believe that? Will we actually follow him? I'm reminded in the Old Testament how God gave his people, the people of Israel, lots of commands, right? Lots of laws. But one of them he gave them was regarding how they were going to do crops. He said, okay, I want you to plant crops, of course, you got to have food, but I want you to work the land for 6 years, and then on the 7th year, give it a rest. Now, from a standpoint of back then, hearing that, it would make no sense. We understand today that like the nutrients and everything, it helps to give the land rest. In fact, the town I grew up in, it had like a corn maze, and they would do it in the same spot for a number of years, but eventually they would move it to a different spot for a number of years and back and forth so that it would still be healthy and good. The land needed rest. But going back to this time where God gave them this command, all they had to go off of was trust. Well, God said to do it. We don't know why he said to do it, but okay. But then eventually it got to a place where they said, you know what? This is nuts. Taking an entire year off of this crop, that doesn't make any sense. What a waste. Let's keep doing it. So they did for a long time. But eventually what happened is they were taken away into exile, and they had to pay for all those years that they did not give the land rest. See, we can ignore God's way, but eventually it will catch up to us. So we have to understand, do we actually believe that? Now, what do we do with all this? How do we live intentionally? How do we follow Jesus? I think the easiest way to look at this is to ask a question. If Jesus were you, how would he live? Now, I can look, well, how am I supposed to follow Jesus? Okay, well, he was never a pastor with a wife and with kids living in the 21st century, so his life doesn't apply, right? Well, no. If he was, how would he do that? He was never married, but if he had a wife, how would he treat his wife? He didn't have kids. If he did, though, how would he treat those kids? For you, Jesus was obviously not a high school student in the 21st century, but if he were, how would he live each day? And that's what we're supposed to imitate. That's what we're supposed to do. Your life is so full of things. And you're at a time in your life where you can say yes to more things, and that's good. You should. But we got to be intentional and strategic as well. And we have to understand, too, that much of the things in your life right now, it's out of your control. That's just how it is. You're under the control of your parents, of teachers, and that's how it's supposed to be right now. So oftentimes, a lot of the hurry that maybe is in your life, you can't do anything about, and that's okay. Don't get frustrated by that. Look at the things, though, that are under your quote-unquote authority, that are under your control, that you can affect. I want to close by talking about purpose over potential, because I think this really is the root of this issue we're talking about. So Jesus, right, Son of God, unlimited potential, no question. But we see that he was laser focused on his purpose. In Mark chapter 1, there's a story about Jesus healing Peter's mother-in-law. And then word gets out, of course, right? So then people start bringing their sick and injured to Jesus. And he's healing, he's casting out demons, he's doing that. And then it gets to the end of the day, and there's just one verse ends with end of the day, and the next verse starts at the start of the day. Now, I don't know exactly what took place in there, but I'm kind of imagining, right? If you heard your neighbor got healed, or even if maybe someone in your own family, or maybe you yourself got healed, maybe you would tell others, and word would probably spread, not only in that community, but in neighboring communities. So I would imagine there's probably people from all around coming, bringing the sick and injured, the demon-possessed, to Jesus to heal. And then we get to Mark 1:35, and it says there, rising early in the morning, while it's still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place. And there he prayed. It doesn't sound like he's in much of a hurry, right? Wakes up, goes off by himself, and takes time alone to pray. But then hurry finds him. Look at verses 36 and 37. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him, and they found him and said, everyone's looking for you. Look, there are people who are showing up, more people that want to get healed. Come on back. We got stuff to do. Let's get going. And what was Jesus' response? Verse 38 says, he said to them, let us go on to the next towns, that I may preach there also. For that is why I came. See, his potential was to heal. to stay. I mean, and with one word, he could literally heal everyone. He's God. But he also knew what his purpose was. His purpose was to preach the kingdom of God. I think if we focus too much on our potential, on our unlimited potential, on all the options that are out there, that's what creates anxiety and stress and pressure and hurry. But if we focus in on our purpose, I think it creates some clarity. To again quote John Mark Comer, he says, how we spend our time is how we spend our lives. It's who we become or don't become. Lifestyle matters. How you live matters. He goes on to talk about that, for example, if you wanted to read more books, now maybe you don't like reading, that's fine. This is just kind of an example he's using. If you wanted to read more books, if you read in 1 year, 417 hours, you could read somewhere in the neighborhood of about 200 books. It's like, well, 417 hours, that's a lot of hours, right? That's like about 1 hour and 10 minutes a day, okay? Now, again, it might sound like 417 hours is a long time, but the average person does 705 hours on social media in a year. 705 hours. So just scrolling through your phone, Instagram, whatever it is. 705 hours. That's a lot, right? Think about this. The average person does 2,375.5 hours on TV in a year. Now, I'm not saying these things are bad in and of themselves. They're really more neutral. Meg and I, we like watching TV once in a while. Social media, you can check in on people, see what's going on. It's fine, but what are we doing with our time? That's the question. Now, once more, the point of like books, you might not care about that, but just what are we doing with our time is really the thing we're trying to say here. We could look at that and say, I just don't have time for this, or I don't have time for that, but really, we all have the same amount of time, we're just using it different ways. What are the areas that maybe we could minimize a little bit to maximize others? Charles Chu says, we have all the time we need. The scary part, the part we ignore, is that we're too addicted, too weak, and too distracted to do what we all know is important. Let's be honest, that hurt a little bit, right? It hurt when I read it, so I think it's probably the same for you too. But it's true. We have all the time we need, it's just we're not using it right all the time. So often we say, I just don't have time to. Well, it's not necessarily true. It's how we use our time. Now, as we're talking about this, I don't want this all to be theoretical. I don't want it to be a downer or anything like that either. I don't want it to be a place of just like, oh, I learned something and then we forget. So what can we actually do about it? So I want to give you one just practical thing to maybe try. Something I tried recently and actually made a big difference. So what I want you to do is take some index cards or some sticky notes and just write down some things. So write down a bunch of stuff. Write down all the stuff that takes time in your life. School, youth group, sports, friends, homework, chores. I mean, not good, not bad, just all the things, right? All the things you have, TV, phone, social media, boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever it might be that takes time. Everything takes time, right? And put all those things out in front of you. And then just take a moment. Don't be in a hurry. Just pause and pray. And ask God, okay, what things should I pick back up? See, in our world today, we are so good at adding things to our schedule, just adding things in general, that we often don't go back and look and say, like, well, what about the things that maybe I don't need to continue carrying? That always happens. And don't just ask, like, okay, is this thing a good thing? Is this thing a good thing? Because, again, there's an unlimited amount of good things. We have to be strategic with those things, though. Is it part of maybe what I'm supposed to do? Part of what I'm supposed to do in the season? And do this lots of times. It doesn't have to be just like a thing you do once. We can keep doing this, keep adjusting, keep going back. Now, there's some things that you have to pick up, right? You're under your parents' authority. So like the chores they tell you to do, whatever it is. Like, well, no, that's part of what God wants you to do. It's part of your purpose right now, obeying your parents. School, that's part of it too. There's some things you've got to do. But the things that are under your control that are kind of more optional, look at those things and say, what about the things that I have a choice in? Is this thing adding hurry to my life? Is this thing actually helping my walk? Is it hurting my walk? There could be a ton of just like neutral things that aren't good or bad. But if you have 1,000 neutral things in your life, well, then that's too much. So we have to look. And what we find that if we say no to some things, it allows us to say yes to some things that are more important. If we actually look at things in front of us and say, you know, I'm going to elevate the time that I give to these things, which means that I have to kind of minimize the time I give to these things that distract me. When it comes down to it, I don't think hurry makes me more like Jesus. I don't think it makes me more of a loving person. In fact, I think when I'm in a hurry, I'm probably the least loving I can be because I don't have time for others. I don't have time for conversation. I don't have time. If I'm in a hurry, well, I just don't have time. Really, what I'm trying to do in my own life is strive as much as I can to eliminate hurry, to get rid of it. Not because there's bad things necessarily, but because there's things that distract. I want to be focused on what God wants me to be focused on, to pick up the things he wants me to pick up, to truly not just be a fan of Jesus, but to actually follow after him with the way I live my life.